Welcome Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
Hi everyone, Daphne Lage here. Join Nita Lanning and me on the Ragin' to the Vlogs show, where we talk about everything, nothing, and all the bits in between. Looking for hour-long conversations about indie comics, social media marketing, and crowdfunding, with the occasional rant and story time? Head on over to the Ragin' 2 channel on YouTube, Mondays through Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern to join in the chat.
Hit the button.
Podcast, it's Critical Blast.
And good evening, everybody. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at CriticalBlast.com, Chief Envelope Licker for Critical Blast Logistics, Myopic Proofreader for Critical Blast Proofreading, and I answer the phones for Critical Blast Consulting. Yeah, we got a lot of businesses, a lot of irons in the fire, and they're all popping these days as people are getting into independent comics. But today is the day we spend talking about what's happening in the LCSs, the local comic shops around the country with the local comic shop guys. And we actually have guys tonight, more than one. We have Michael Tierney with us, as always. Michael, welcome to the show.
Always good to be here.
And from Belva, Illinois, we have Mr. Dave Dyer from Cosmic Comics. Dave, welcome back, sir.
Long time no see, everybody. Good to see everybody.
It's been a big year.
Yeah, it has. It's been and it's going by so quick. So
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a 14-year-old, and I'm like, were we just pushing him around Six Flags in a stroller last week?
I know how you feel. I have a 19-year-old who's a sophomore in college now. So it's just nuts.
It's crazy. And joining us tonight, we also have Alex from Kursova Magazine. Alex, how are things with you, sir?
Hey, it's going all right.
Alex is here because Michael's getting ready to launch another epic chapter in the Wild Stars saga. Will be coming up on Kickstarter soon. We're going to preview the page on that. But before we get to that, let's actually talk comic shop business, because Michael does the mail order. We have not had a report from the retailer shelf, from the browsers in a while here. So we've had a lot of things happen with DC and Marvel. A lot of independents coming up. What's going on where you are, Dave? I mean, what do you see that's selling that you didn't expect to, and what were you told that ought to be gangbusters that's toilet paper?
Well, and isn't that the way it always is with Marvel and DC? They like to tout how huge they are, and then you buy X amount of covers or X amount of copies with all the variants, and they sit on the shelf and do nothing. So the one that I was really blown away by this week was the Avengers Forever. Now, Avengers never moves for me at all, and yet I sold out of Avengers Forever like that.
Was there a special story in it or something? Or
well, apparently Deathlock comes into this one. So, and yeah, Deathlock is, I guess, Deathlock is one of those great. I love Deathlock. I always have since the 70s, because he's basically an ugly $6 billion man. So
yeah,
but yeah, that really just made them fly off the shelf. Strange #1 with the female Doctor Strange. That sold really well, which we were anticipating it would.
Great cover.
Yeah, great covers on that. Absolutely. So yeah, and I Batman, we'll see what happens.
Batman's all that DC produces anymore, isn't it? I mean,
what's that?
God.
Batman is all that DC produces anymore, isn't it?
Yeah, and once again, you got a gazillion more Batman titles getting ready to come out, and I get so frustrated with the oversaturation of Batmans or even Spider-Mans, that kind of thing. So it's been an interesting week. Independent title wise, I saw a ticking up of Vampirella. The Vampirella Unholy series is selling very well for us. It's a great storyline. That's where she marries Dracula in there. So that was a nice, Dynamite puts that out. Evil Ernie has been flying off the shelves for us, which I'm loving to see. So, because those are beloved old Chaos staples, and seeing them kind of finding a new family, because I'm really pushing it. Because I get my audience comes in and like, Dave, what do you recommend? Oh, well, I'm not going to recommend very little of DC or Marvel. I'm going to recommend the independents and the underground comics. So we've been seeing a nice little uptick of that. So
that's why I always send all the crowdfunders that I interview your way.
I know you do. In fact, I've got a long list of guys I've got to get back to. It's just been crazy. We've been very, very busy. Even with the snowstorms hitting us out here in the Midwest. We'd be closed down 1 or 2 days, and then I'd open up the next day when I could shovel out the store, and boom, it's been gangbusters. So, with the economy being the way it is and everything, I'm not seeing a slowdown of sales on comics. I think people are going, you know what? I'm not going to let gas prices bother me. I'm not going to let, a war in Russia bother me. I want my comics, because at least if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out reading my favorite comic issue.
There you go.
So you got to love that.
Robert Roberts is in the chat asking what a lot of people ask when they talk to an LCS guy is, how's the sales on Son of Kal-El?
It never really found its audience. I've said this in the past, guys, and look, I don't feel that comic books need to be PC. It's all about story and content, and I still say this, nobody cares who's sleeping with who, and no one cares to see the superhero waking up with another superhero in bed after a long night of stupping. And it's irrelevant to the flipping story. So to answer your question, Son of Kal-El has really came out. Everybody wanted issue 1. Nobody wants any of the other issues. It just sits on my shelf. Yeah. So, and all of those do. All of those do. The Aquaman #1 sold a little bit, but Aqualad went out with a whimper.
And to put this in a little bit of a perspective that you're unique to, Dave, is that these books that DC's putting out, where they're trying to really get into the I guess the atypical sexual relationship kind of situations, like with Aquaman, like with Superman, Son of Kal-El. You're not selling them very much in your store, and if I recall correctly, you are directly across the street from a gay bar.
Yes, from an alternative bar, absolutely. And it is so, I don't know where Marvel and DC started to think that this was going to become the core audience, the alternative audience. I've asked I've asked the members or people who've gone over to Escapades, which is an alternative bar, and I've asked my gay friends that come into the shop. I'm like, do you guys care about this stuff? And they're like, no, we care about superheroes being superheroes and whooping some ass. And that's and that's what they want. They want to see superheroes beating the bad guys, not superheroes screwing whoever they're screwing. So that's what I'm seeing in my shop. I don't know what other shops are seeing. Everybody's different where wherever their shop's set up at. But like
sure.
you said, I'm right across from an alternative bar, and none of them ever come in to buy that specific issue.
I saw the same thing in my stores, which I had open for nearly 40 years. And, it was the same thing. The people with that alternative lifestyle, they didn't buy it. They had no interest in it at all.
And, we carry LGBTQ comics and everything. And there really is just not a huge following for that format as of right now. Now, maybe later on there will be, and I'll continue to carry that because I want to be all inclusive for everything. Both children, and I even carry, and it's so funny, when I opened up 3.5 years ago, guys, I remember my wife and I talking that we were not going to carry adult kind of comic books, Now, I'm not talking like the 70s, like the Fabulous Freak Brothers or anything like that. But I was going to be careful as to what kind of adult comics I carried. I wasn't going to carry any. Well, now I've kind of gotten into the adult gore comics, the horror comics, adult horror, like Hatchet, where they have alternative covers that have nudity in it. That now has all gone behind the counter there, and I'd be careful how I display them.
You got to in the Midwest.
You have to. And case in point, Saga number 55 finally came out after 4 years of it being gone. And that very first issue had some freaky deaky animal nudity in there. So I had to put that behind the counter. Now Saga is selling very well for us at the shop because that's been, that's such a cult comic book that the fans are still there. The fans have been clamoring and waiting patiently for number 55 to come out. It does. It does. Just like Monstrous does and all of that I guess, for lack of a better word, furry comics, the furry people, but it's cool. But yeah, so we've kind of, since probably the last time I talked to you guys, which has been a long time, we've expanded out our audience base at the shop.
Kind of touch on one of the things you said about, children's books. One thing I found, that when Marvel and DC were trying to make children's books, they were talked down to them. And I kind of wonder if it's the same way where, people know when they're being pandered.
Michael, it's changed, So remember when we were all kids, we would read the board books. Remember that? The big, thick cardboard book. Well, Marvel has started producing a bunch of board books for children to learn about reading and all that. So like I just got in, I have the Captain America one, the Black Panther, and I just got a Thor one in, and I love carrying those because I'll get parents in, and my kid's 5 and wants to start learning to read comics. I'm like, well, let's not get him into what's going on with Thor currently or Daredevil or even Spider-Man, but why don't we start out with something that's very simple, help them learn to read, and I end up selling a lot of those kind of board books and children-oriented books. DC does it as well. So I think
a lot of stuff I wish they'd had when I was still had my store, because I had a huge bunch of kids coming in, parents with their kids, and they wanted to get them started reading comics, and there was just nothing being made for them, even as recently as a couple of years ago. And now I'm seeing a lot of content finally starting to come out. I was like, I'd been asking for this for decades. They kept telling me, nobody wants it, because everything they did was a pablum that was just pandering. Like, oh, well, we're talking down to the kids. Well, the kids know they're being talked down to. And, they didn't want it. I mean, nobody wanted to read. When we were kids, we were reading the same thing as the adults. And, they wanted to curse. They just put the exclamation, £, @ sign. You filled in the blank. And you can still read the story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm digging what they're trying to do. There's still the rumor that someday these guys will go digital. But if they're going to, you can't prove it by me as of yet. We'll see. Although I just did a final cutoff, and I can't remember what issue it was, but the damn thing is like $9.97 retail, and I'm like, what in the hell are they doing? I get it, we still got a paper shortage and yada yada yada, but when you start hitting the $9-10 issues, I order very little of them because they will just not move that quick. And remember the Aquaman, all the anniversary issues, Aquaman, Batman, all of those
one
big
of the
ones.
One of the comic shops that's still open here in Little Rock has a thick stack of the $9 or the $9.99 Valentine's comics that they still haven't sold.
And I'm the same way. I just pulled all the Aquaman 80-page extravaganza anniversary, and they did it with Robin, and I'm still sitting on a bunch of that shit too as well.
Yeah, it's so hard to be a retailer because you got, when you're going for actual retail, you've got to predict what people want to read before they even know it.
Yeah,
and you can get burned. And now that you were talking about $10 books, the burn can be pretty bad.
Yeah, and then on top of that, and Michael, and this is both of you, all three of you guys know this as well, is that then you do the final cutoff on issue number 2 and 3, but issue 1 hasn't even come out yet, so you don't even know if there's an audience, and so you're sitting there scratching your head, going, what do I do? Do I keep buying this? The old rule of thumb was go with up to issue number 3, and if it doesn't sell, then stop it. Well, in this day and age, no. If no one buys number 1, I usually don't get number 2 in because it's very rarely are they going to find its audience after issue 1 if no one bought it. So
I remember Michael did that with Arrow.
Yeah. Another classic example was the Arrow one. I'm sitting on a stack of that.
Yeah, I didn't sell.
It had a ton of variants on that first issue, but
dude,
it was just such a bad comic. No,
I got a bunch of those in the Green Lantern ones too. Come on.
I was talking about Marvel's Arrow, the AERO, the Chinese superhero.
Yeah, I got a stack of those. Well, it's like, and guys, don't even, once again, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this since I've been on last, but don't even get me going on flipping Bad Idea on that debacle.
Oh my gosh!
Are they still publishing or are they not still publishing? I don't know.
No, they're done. They're done now. Apparently, knock on wood. I hope they are. Here's the thing. I have a box of Bad Idea. I tore the sound out. I don't even have the poster up anymore. They kissed my butt. I'm done with them because they screwed the retailer so bad, because that initial first order, we had to maintain that for every flipping title after that. Ow. So if you got 25 or 30 copies of issue number 1 of ENIAC, you've got to get 25 or 30 copies of every ENIAC, every other title they came out with. So I've got a half box, if not, actually I have more than that. I have a full long box of back issues that I'm blowing out for 30% off the cover price. And I still can't get rid of it.
Were you able to up your order if you needed to?
I'm sorry, what was that, RJ?
Okay. Were you able to up your order if you'd had to? I mean, if you ordered 25?
Yeah, you could up it. You couldn't cut it, though. Yeah.
You couldn't cut it. And if you upped it, did it stay?
Yeah. No, so if you upped it, they didn't stay at that. It still stayed at the original amount, but you could always up an extra copy if you wanted to. But why would you do that if you're already getting 25 or 30? I even posted this on the Bad Idea website, or not website, on the Facebook page, saying any back issues you guys want, 30% off cover price plus shipping. I sold one full set. That was it. One full set. And then nothing after that. And people are complaining they can't find it. I'm practically giving it to you, and you still won't take it.
And I'll say this as a reader: when Bad Idea first announced some of their books and some of their teams, I was interested. But then when I found out all the crazy hoops that you had to jump through, I'm like, I don't want any of it. And I'm sure a bunch of people felt that way. And so, readers are jumping through hoops. The retailers are jumping through tons of hoops, and just nobody really wants to deal with that. I mean, it's too much of a pain. It's like, if I want this book, I want to be able to just, order it and just have it on my pull in a pull box, but you can't do that with Bad Idea books.
No.
Wasn't there a book, Dave, that you had to send back? You had it for like 24 hours and then whatever's back.
No, Bad Idea didn't even allow a return program. These guys are total jackasses.
Oh no, but there was one book where they said if we send it to you, you have to send all the unsold copies back the next day, and that's
which I didn't do that. I was not even going to play with that.
Yeah, no.
I have like a handful of those left, and you still can't. They're in my 30% off box. And
There
a
has never
dollaration.
been a more appropriately named company.
Brother, you got. That's what I said. You know?
It was like, let's see how bad we can do this before we're absolutely shutting ourselves down.
Yeah. And there's still even a question if they're going to shut themselves down. You know, they're going to rebirth themselves somehow, but they have gotten such a bad reputation at this point that I think there's only, and maybe some of your listeners here can chime in on whether or not they still even give a shit about Bad Idea. If I never see another Bad Idea comic book, I'm happy.
I never participated. Whenever they say, okay, here's how you get to dance, I'm like, nah, I don't dance.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, here's the thing. I was begging for them to fucking kick me off their program, and they still kept me in the program. It's simple. They would send me invoices, and I won't pay them. And they would send me a second reminder and a third reminder and a fourth reminder. And I'm like, if I never pay you guys, will you please just drop me from the program? And they didn't. I'm like, man, how stupid is this company?
And wasn't it supposed to be like limited to a certain number of retailers? So that you had advantages. Yeah,
250. And I would love to shake the hands of the retailers who got kicked off the program because they didn't have to deal with this crap anymore.
and your biggest competitor managed to get in there with you. So
yeah, right down the street, a mile down, when they told us that they weren't going to be doing stuff like that. So this company was less than honest to all the retailers and just screwed the retailers to the pooch. It really did.
There is one company that's coming out. They've done all Kickstarters so far. Bad Bug Media. Keep an eye out for them.
Okay.
They've got a handful of titles out. One of the titles they've been putting out is called Pocus Hocus. Not Hocus Pocus. It's backwards. It's a really, really fun title. I've got the first 2 issues. The third one's coming out. It's about this magician. His name is Pocus Hocus. He makes a deal with a demon. The demon even says, that's the stupidest name I've ever heard. Because he wants to get real magic for the stage.
Uh-huh.
And the reason he wants to do this is to impress his father. Right there in the first issue, he gets the demon's magic. He works his way up very quickly to being the world's greatest stage magician. And on the night of his big debut, his father dies. Now, his father was an asshole. That's why he wanted to impress his father. His father was this huge stage magician, famous and everything. So it's this big O. Henry kind of twist on it. But now he's this totally disaffected, doesn't give a shit about anything, still does the magic stuff, but it's like, shit, whatever. And the guys write the adventure continuing from there. It's I won't tell everything. I'm just going to say, watch for that to start showing up in Diamond or the previews magazine soon enough, because it's going to be one that I recommend.
Okay. Good.
And I don't know, you talked about the Vampirella spinoffs and such. I've been enjoying. I don't enjoy a lot from the Dynamite previews that I get, but I have been enjoying the latest Draculina.
Yeah, Draculina is great. I've been reading that too, and I love it. Love it.
That's got a real weird twist on it where, like, she's 2 people from 2 different realities, and she's, it's almost a Captain Marvel Vampirella kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm enjoying Draculina. I'm enjoying, like I said, Vampirella Unholy. Purgatory, I'm loving. Evil Ernie, yeah. The old Chaos universe, man, it's back.
Yeah.
And Dynamite's doing a pretty decent job. Yeah, we even have Hell Sonia now. So.
Yeah, Sonia's done. They're doing everything with Sonia.
They beat her to death, but yeah.
When they did Blue Sonia and Orange Sonia, I'm like, I'm out. I don't even want to see this anymore. Gabriel, I trimmed it. I did trim the beard. Maybe I should get a pointy hat. Just to,
It looks good. It's very 2022.
It's full. It's definitely a COVID, single guy
COVID
beard,
right?
And I just, I pull it down like this, and it just kind of shrinks everything up here in. I feel like that little Play-Doh barber guy set.
Right.
What else is going on? I mean, you talked about the big stuff this week. The Batman opening this weekend.
Has anybody seen it?
I plan to see it tomorrow.
Okay.
The only bump in
But I
sales
know
I
people-
saw recently was Futurama when they announced it was coming back. It's always sold well for me, but I just blew out every copy I had on eBay. They're all gone now. Once they announced Futurama was coming back. So Batman's at the theaters and Futurama's selling.
All right, that's cool. Well, RJ, you have to let us know what you think of it because I'm shaking my head on it. So
Barkley Batman?
Yeah, on the Batman.
Yeah, on the Batman. I know people that I trust that have seen it. One of them who writes for our site went to see it today. I said, okay, I'm going to go sit down for Batman. I'll let you know in 3 hours what I think. Yeah. And he was pretty cynical going in. He came out and says, holy shit, this is my favorite Batman movie.
Good.
I've heard that, but I've also heard other people go. See, here's my thing, guys. I'm a traditionalist. Okay. So I like my villains to look like the villains that I grew up with.
Sure.
I'm having a hard not to say anything against Colin Farrell or any of the actors that are in this film. And everybody's like, well, you got to have an open mind. No, I don't. I don't have to have an open mind. It's an Elseworld storyline. I get that, loosely based on year 1 and 2 by Frank Miller. But when you start messing with the way your Penguin looks and your Riddler looks, and you draw similarities to other things that have already been done, that's my thing. Look, I love the DC universe, just like I love the Marvel universe, cinematic wise. I'm still think that Zack Snyder's cut is the most brilliant thing that I've seen.
Oh my God, I finally got to watch that. And I'm like, not only is this a different movie than the original Justice League movie, this movie has a plot that I can follow, and there's an actual story to it.
It has a complete story and still leaves it. It gives you an ending, but then it also gives you the nightmare settings of what could possibly happen in that timeline in the future.
Exactly.
So, and so I was very, very happy with all those elements. This element, like I said, it just changed so much that it made me feel uncomfortable, and I haven't even seen the film for the Batman.
Yeah, well, here's the biggest problem that I can see right now, is that Marvel had a cinematic universe, and guess what? Robert Downey Jr. was Iron Man in every single appearance of Iron Man. Right now, you've got you've got Ben Affleck in Justice League. We're hopping out of that to the Batman with Robert Pattinson. And then into the Flash with Michael Keaton.
And Ben Affleck.
And Ben Affleck, which you can say is multiversal. But then we're going to Batgirl after that. And guess what? It's going to be Michael Keaton.
Which like, I had to question that. Right, because the Commissioner Gordon in the Batgirl is J.K. Simmons, who is the Batman in Affleck's universe.
Well, I thought the Gordon and Batgirl was Jeffrey Wright.
Well, you would know more than I had heard. It was J.K. Simmons. So you look that up and let me know. Or panel,
definitely check it out.
Let us know. Yeah, because that would make more sense to me. Because that was what I was questioning: is how can J.K. Simmons be Gordon if he's Gordon and Affleck's Batman? So that wasn't making sense to me. So
yeah, they just changed them around, and not that they didn't from Keaton to Kilmer to whoever it was in the last one there anyway.
Yeah, but back in those days there was no such thing as this multi-universe.
They were trying to go for consistent.
Yeah, there was no DC cinematic universe, and that brings me to that next point: was how many more Batmans do we have to have? The Batman period is just DC's cinematic go-to while they wait for other, I think somebody brought up that every 4 years there's been a Batman film.
Does that include Lego Batman?
Yeah, including Lego Batmans and
best Batman.
Yeah. So I'm like, enough with Batman. That's
all they got, though. DC is like in such a bat hole right now. I mean, I love Batman, but oh gosh, I'm burned out on Batman. I am too much Batman everywhere. And
Ethan, you want the link? Tell me.
Yeah.
Mr. Van Skyvers popped in and said there's too much Batman shit. He's absolutely right. It's just overwhelming the market. Ethan, if you want to join the panel, let me know.
Overwhelming comic book market. It's just like Spider-Man is too. Getting sick and tired of Spider-Man shit. So it goes both ways. And then here's the thing. I don't know if you guys heard that. So there's a new boss and head of Warner Brothers DC Cinematic Universe. Did you read about that? It was announced last week, I believe. Yeah, it was announced last week. I saw it on a YouTube thing, and excuse me if I can't remember this guy's name, but he came in, he cleaned house. He got rid of what's her name, who I don't like, which we've talked about her in the past. He dumped her ass. He got rid of Devlin, or was it Emmerich or Devlin? Emmerich. Got rid of Emmerich. I can't remember who it was. And he got rid of the other guy. Basically, the three who shit all over Snyder. He got rid of all three of them. And he went back to talk to Ben Affleck. He's talked with Henry Cavill. He's talked with, God, I'm brain farting all these noises. The guy who played Cyborg, who had a lot of issues. What's that?
That was Ray, and I can't remember his last name. He was the one who had all the issues with John's. With
Joan, and Josh Whedon too. And he's talked with all of them, which gives me hope that he's going to somehow reinstill the Snyderverse back into DC. So as far as the cinematic universe goes, Ray Fisher.
Thank you, Gabriel. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And then what was Gabriel? Who's the lady who ran the cinematic universe that nobody liked? I hate her. So I can't remember her name, but she's gone. She's
Ethan,
out.
I sent you the link to your Twitter.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting because you got to give Snyder a lot of credit because he kept it consistent.
Yeah.
Whether you liked it or not, at least he had a path that it was climbing. And he did it with the Justice League. Even if you watch Wonder Woman 84 or the original, the first one, even when you watch Aquaman, even when you watch Superman's, all of it has that Snyder feel to it. He was involved in it as producer, if nothing else. So it's no different than when Christian Bale was Batman, his director. At least he was consistent. I may not have liked them all, but at least I knew that. Yeah, at least I knew that Nolan was doing his version of Batman. So I think that's what hurt the DCU so much is Snyder being ousted, and then them not knowing where they were going to go.
There's a total lack of leadership and direction.
Absolutely. So maybe this new guy will, get us back, get DCU back on track. We can only hope. So, because look, we got a lot of the new Flash film coming out. You've got Black Adam coming out. Looks great. Got Aquaman 2 coming out.
Ethan Van Skyver in the house. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Let me fix my microphone here real quick. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Okay. Thank you. So, I was just watching the show and then drawing, and I thought I would, hop in. Thank you for the invitation, RJ.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here, man. You come all the time. God knows we're the least watched comics channel on the internet. You know that, right?
What? Why is that?
I have no idea. I'm here every single night. Always have a CG or a crowdfunder on every night at 7 p.m. Central. Got thousands of shows. We try to keep it interesting, but there's a lot of competition out there. There's.
Yeah, there's a lot of competition out there. Everybody's out there talking about Lord of the Rings and other racist things. They're talking about the Batman and the racism implicit in that. See, if you talk about something other than racism and things, I think you'll find more success. And that's what you're doing.
Well, never bring it up.
Yeah, you should just advertise that there's less, racism talk on your show. I had to talk about that all night last night. Hello, Cosmic Dave. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, man?
I like your goatee, pal. I'm gonna do that.
Thank you, buddy.
Too.
I like your pink, whatever that is. That's cool.
Cold in here.
Ethan, this is the LCS Guys Show. We have this every 2 weeks where we talk with local comic shop owners about what's selling, what's not, and what their fans are talking about. Michael Tierney had 2 brick and mortar stores for 40 years in Little Rock. Had to close them down because of the not necessarily because of COVID, but because of Diamond shutting down. So he had to get out of the business and go mail order. Dave operates a store in Belleville, and you're looking at expanding that one out as well, right?
Yeah, we're doing. Yeah, we kind of, because of the inflation and economy and still issues with Diamond, Lunar, and Penguin, we're put that on the back burner. But yeah, it's still a plan in the future here.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, look, brick and mortar shops. I just read something from somebody, a retailer who just decided to stop ordering new comics altogether. He just announced to his customers, he's like, look, they're not selling. So I'm going to keep going, for, another couple of months. Like if you want me to order stuff, special order stuff, I'll definitely do that. But I'm going to stop ordering new stuff. And yeah, I mean, look, I go into comic shops and I buy stuff like this. This is what's on my desk. I'm reading the stuff from when I was a kid, West Coast Avengers. This was before John Byrne. Remember when John Byrne took over this book and it was really good? This is what it's all about. I mean, this is reading back issues right now. That's the way. But I'm just hearing a lot of people are just saying that they're going to stop ordering new stuff. What can we do about that? How can we make that better? How can we make new comics better so that people actually want to buy them?
It's amazing now. The comics have some of the best artwork they've ever had, but the stories just are not there. I mean, we go out into that decompressed storytelling because everybody wants to have the graphic novel assembled later, and they forgot about telling somebody a good story on a monthly basis that always had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now you just get a chapter. You're in the middle of stuff, and I remember back in a lot of people I know did not like Jim Shooter as an editor, but he had a rule that, hey, you got to treat every comic as if it's somebody's first comic. And when he was running Marvel, they were 2/3 of the industry, and it was constantly growing. Since he's gone, a lot of those management decisions he had about how we're going to present this have gone away, and late shipping, gazillion covers sometimes. It's got to be so commercial they forgot about telling everybody a good story. The good artwork's there now. Used to the artwork was a weak part. Now the art's a strong part, but the stories just are not there anymore like they used to be. They're retelling you the same stories you've already read, and they're decompressing them out. I mean, somebody can walk into a store and in a couple of minutes you can read an issue, and they could go down your shelves and read almost everything that comes out in just a little bit for free. And that was something I always had to battle. I really wanted to make me into the free library. I was like, no, this is not a library. This is called a store.
Well, Jim Shooter knew how to keep the ships running on time, the trains running on time. Like he took his job seriously. Comic books were an industry. They were a small industry, but he took it seriously, man. I just feel like people are, I feel like we're hiring clowns, ridiculous people to work in comics right now. And the more ridiculous you are, the more apt you are to work in comics, to find work in comics. By the way, I sent the link out on Twitter, so maybe more people will come in here. We'll see what happens. But yeah, nowadays everybody just wants to. The main concern is television and movies. Comics are they just seem to be because they're a part of a bigger industry, the big corporations now. Nobody's taking them seriously. It's almost as if we had this really nice lemonade stand, and but we were making the best lemonade in the world, and then we got co-opted by Burger King or something like that. And the lemonade stand just doesn't mean anything in that context.
Well, I've said this before on several shows. I said the biggest problem with mainstream comics today is that they're no longer being run by people who love comics. We don't have the Julie Schwartzes, we don't have the Stan Lees, we don't have the the Roy Thomases anymore. Not in the mainstream comics. It's just, people with keeping IPs alive. That's their job. I have to keep the IP farm growing.
What did you guys think of Dan DiDio?
I think he made some bad decisions, but I think he loved comics.
Wasn't a fan.
Not looking so bad in retrospect in some ways. I mean, I also really liked some of the IPs he made. Like, I loved Sideways and was sad that it only lasted about a year.
Yeah.
See,
Hey, guys, I got to get going. Ethan, I hope to talk to you again soon, okay?
All right, Cosmic
Michael?
Dave. Great talking to you.
You too. Michael, love you, buddy. Long time.
Take care. Stay safe.
Chris, what is it? Chrisova? You would have a rock star name. So, anyway, brother, cool.
Take care.
RJ, rock on, guys. Hey, next
You
time,
guys.
all right? Be well.
See you
Be
soon,
safe.
Dave.
All
Bye.
right. Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye.
See, my only issue with Dan DiDio was that I think he had his own idea for how to run editorial, and I think Jeff Johns had a better idea for how to run the story of the history of the DC universe. I contend to this day that Doomsday Clock had an entirely different story that got nixed halfway through and had to be shoehorned somewhere else. And I've gone off on that theory multiple times because
You think somebody stopped Jeff from telling the story he wanted to tell?
I think so. I haven't asked him directly, but I think, okay, Ethan, you're a big DC Universe fan, probably bigger than I am, and I've been reading them for 40 years. I learned to read at 5 years old off DC Comics, and I'm 55. Green Lantern number 40, which I own. Krona sees the big, giant electric blue hand creating the DC Universe. 40 years later, 45 years later, Dr. Manhattan says, I'm going to create some life. You can't tell me that Jeff Johns doesn't connect dots like that, because he did it with Green Lantern Rebirth. He did it with Flash Rebirth. He's an expert at taking all these dangling little plot threads and saying, oh yeah, these all belong to the same tapestry. Here's how. Because Dr. Manhattan cannot time travel. They made a big deal about that in Watchmen. He's like, I can't move in time. I can only move forward. I can just see it all. But yet in Doomsday Clock, they had him changing history all the time, which he can't do. I said, the only way he can do that is if he created the DC universe, said, nope, not this time, wads it up, throws it away, starts over, does something different at the same point. That's what I think Jeff was doing. And I think it was explaining why all the reboots happened, because Dr. Manhattan kept trying to get it right. But that's me. I can't, get in Jeff's head for sure.
Yeah, there was a little bit of conflict. Sursova, there was a little bit of conflict between Jeff Johns and some of the other people at DC Comics. People believe that Jeff Johns, he would come in and he would basically dominate. Jeff could have run the whole show by himself. He could have run the whole show by himself. But that would leave some other people with nothing to do. Some people who like to micromanage affairs. So there was a little bit of conflict there. And you might be right. People were interfering with him. They interfered with us a little bit on Flash Rebirth, I recall.
Well, I'm hoping that this return that he's having to DC Comics, provided there is a DC Comics to return to now that they've been evicted from their offices, will mean we'll get to see bigger and better things from Jeff in DC in the future.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. What do you think, Michael Tierney, about the DC office move?
Yeah, I hadn't heard a whole lot about it. I just try getting any kind of facts. For sure. I just don't really have an opinion.
Yeah, DC got booted from their offices by Warner that said, you know what, open floor plan, hoteling, the entire, because I work in that kind of a corporate structure for several different companies that I've worked for. And it's, there's no privacy. It's like, don't bring in pictures of your family. We don't want to see them. Just leave nothing personal at the desk.
Well, that's the whole thing. When you work in comics, you'd go into any Marvel office or any DC office. If you actually visited the offices, people's cubicles or even their big office space would be decorated like this. It would be like all personal, all toys, comics. You'd have a comic rack. You would have goofy pop figure. What do you think of pop figurines, Michael?
I never did well with them. They had poor discounts. I just couldn't make any money with them. I just handled them as a special order. They just did not do well for me.
Oh, that's interesting. I hear that like a lot of people like to buy them. I think they're horrendous. I think they're really bad.
Yeah.
But
they just didn't work for me.
Yeah, like it's just a little big-headed version, a silly cutesy version of some character that you
over
like.
and over again, just with a little bit of repaint.
The boxes all look the same. I don't know. There's something really strange about it. But yeah, like you can't do that anymore. Now the new DC offices are just kind of like standing room only. You ever go to a convention and you see like a bunch of beatnik kids sitting against the wall with their laptops or their iPads or their whatevers, and they're just sitting there doing work. You go into I mean, you can't go into a Starbucks without smelling hippies. Like, I mean, like really sitting there, it's like go home. Go home. Like it used to be like Wi-Fi was expensive and you'd go to a Starbucks to use Wi-Fi. This is not your office space. This is a coffee shop. Take your coffee and get out of here with your dash of soy milk. Get out of my coffee establishment. But they just sit in there. That's what DC Comics' new office is going to be like now.
Yeah, that's not very conducive to creativity when you don't have any kind of a personal space.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's definitely a downgrade. Like, it's going to be, it might be conducive to creativity. People might be able to focus better. The theory is that communication is going to be more effective, but I got to say, it's a little bit demoralizing when you lose their original offices, the offices that they just got thrown out of. They look like you were waiting in line for a ride at Universal Studios. Like you're going to go on the Hulk roller coaster. You ever do that? And it's all like great decor and everything. And it just looks like a movie set. That must have felt pretty cool to go into work like that every day.
Yeah.
I would definitely enjoy that. Yeah. Well, Ethan, I had a question for you that you're in a better position to answer than anybody I could ask before, because this, being the LCS Guys Show, we ask what's selling in the stores and find out what's not selling. By the way, confirmed, son of Kal-El, not selling.
Is that right? It's not. Yeah.
No, not at all. What was your percentage cut back on that, Michael, after issue number 1?
Massive. I'm down to 2 people.
Even after when he came out as bisexual, that whole issue, I mean, did that issue do well for you?
No, people were started cutting even before that, and I had people who were big into Superman going, "Hey, what else do I have that I can buy?" I'm like, "Whoa, they got the Son of Kal." They're like, "No, don't want nothing to do with that." If people just were dropping it, I could not cut my orders fast enough to keep up with the people dropping it.
I would say the math on that makes sense though, because if you think about it, like this is a fake Superman book. It's not the Christopher Reeve. It's not the Clark Kent Superman. Yeah. It's not the one that everybody knows. It's already like a bootleg kind of fake new Superman that nobody can relate to. And then so few people are going to be buying that in comparison with the real Superman book. And then what you want to do is you want to make it of social interest to about 10% of the population of the United States. That's a good idea. I don't know why that's not working better for DC. Sarcasm off.
Yeah. Let's just ignore 90% or more of our customers.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like it feels like this book is. They go, well, the comics are for everyone. Yeah, I agree. Let's make comics for everyone. Well, if that comic is going to be mostly appealing to bisexual LGBTQ people, that's cool. It's for them. And then I won't buy it. How's that sound? I'm just not going to buy it.
Yeah, they didn't buy it.
It's not for you. That's the saying, right? But the question I was trying to get to was, with all the success that's happening in the crowdfunding market, this is going directly to the customers. I buy the book from you, you ship the book to me. There's no middleman. How do we fit the LCS shop model into this model? I mean, is there an intersection that we're not seeing yet to help bring these books to a wider readership through the LCS infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, anytime we want to do it, we will. I mean, I'm a little nervous about it because, first of all, you can charge a premium for crowdfunded comics. They're indie books. I'm speaking directly to my audience. So I know they're going to buy them because they're already my customers. I'm only speaking to my customers. Now, how do I speak to your customers who have many, many more choices, who might not care as much about me as they do about Marvel and DC? I'm already an indie property. Maybe they've heard of Cyberfrog. They probably have heard of Cyberfrog. But how do I get a premium comic book into your store with a beautiful chromium cover, an autograph in it, all of the things that make All Caps Comics just whiz bang awesome indie comics, the Lamborghini of comic books, essentially? How do I put that into your store and convince enough of your customers to take a chance on a new brand of comics and pay a premium for it for you? It's not easy. It's not an easy situation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try it.
Something you have to grow into.
Yeah, like I'll try it. I really believe, the future of comics is the European model. You're going to get fewer and fewer people coming in there and buying monthly comics. I think that's already happening. So, instead, artists that have followings like myself, we're going to do one book a year, one big book a year. We're going to charge $25. We're going to put a $25 sticker on it. It's going to be between 48 and 100 pages, and that's what it's going to be. That's what you're going to get. It's going to be nicer than a normal comic book, and we're going to put it out there. And we'll see how that works. Is that going to work in a comic book store? If we have an ongoing story, like Cyberfrog is an ongoing story with a new chapter coming every year or so, like the Harry Potter novels, like the Twilight novels, like the Hunger Games books. People grow up with these books, and they come back for them every time there's a new installment. Could that work with comics? My guess is that yes. My guess is that it will work. My guess is that companies who are paying, let's say that you hired Jim Lee to come in and do a 6-issue Batman story or 6-issue anything story, 120 pages worth of content, and you're paying him the same amount of money. You're paying the same amount at the printer. You're paying the distributor the same amount of money for those 120 Jim Lee pages, which are not cheap. And then you put them out, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3. Between issues 1 and issue 2, there's going to be a 40% drop. Why? Why are you doing that then? Why would you put a different number? Why would you break it up into installments when you could put them all together, slap $25 on the book, and get the same amount of return? Everybody, the comic book industry as a whole, the same amount of return for those pages as the first issue. Like, things have to change. Things are not the newsstand is dead. The brick and mortar shops are slowing down, and we just have to change the way we're doing business.
Yeah,
because
one thing that frustrates my customers is if a story didn't finish. And there are certain publishers, I'm not going to call any names, that they couldn't draw in new readers because people are like, well, once their sales drop, they're not going to finish the story. And, so if you're going to start something, you need to finish it, because the next time you try to start something, if people say, hey, this is a guy I cannot rely on to give me, satisfaction of completing the story, they're not even going to try anything else that they do. And so, you got to be reliable. A satisfied customer buys a whole lot more than a frustrated one.
Well, that is true.
Didn't DC also make the decision when they cut a lot of their titles? They said, okay, for the last issue of this run, digital only. They did that with Supergirl.
Yeah, I was a fan of the Terrifics, and I mean, I plugged that title hard. I was loyal. It was one of the first comics that I got in a complete run, starting from number 1. They're like, oh, by the way, we're not gonna make floppies for the last 2 issues.
Yeah.
How financially strapped are they if they can't do that?
It's expensive.
Don't hang the reader out to dry.
I mean, making a comic book is expensive, and they just don't have. I mean, it used to be if you as a DC Comics artist working 10 years ago, say, the threshold was 50,000 copies before we get royalties. In other words, they start making money at 50,000 copies. So, breaking even is 50,000. What's selling 50,000 now? 10,
Not much.
50, it's like not too many books that they're putting. They'll put out 1 or 2 big tentpole books with 25 variant covers that'll shock and awe. This book sold 200,000 copies. Well, that book, with all of its variant covers, is paying for everything else that you're publishing down the line. The mid list is dead. It's being held up by this one tentpole comic that you put out, and every company seems to have one of those every month. Todd McFarlane is dominating because he doesn't even have a mid list. He's just got, King Spawn or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's the strategy right now. So it's so expensive to put out a comic book. You got to pay your creative team, you got to pay the printers, you got to pay the distributors. You guys are getting a discount on the book. I mean, there's nothing left for the companies. There's just nothing left. So it's very expensive, and you can see them switching to a digital model. But again, my idea is just fewer, better, bigger comics, less frequency, more quality, higher cover price. I think that would work. And the other thing is that the market is changing the way it consumes entertainment anyway. People like to just get it all at once. I'm going to Netflix. I'm going to binge this new show. All 20 episodes are out all at once. I want to watch it all, or I'll just wait. I'll wait until it's all available. I'll binge it. I think comics.
Yeah, I had that same frustration with Peacemaker. I was like, I found out I had HBO Max. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and binge Peacemaker. Well, nope, I've got to wait a week. It's like appointment television again. I'm like, okay, well, every Thursday I'll be back, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, people will still do that for certain big. I mean, the people did it for The Mandalorian. They're going to do it for Star Wars things. But for books that they're on the fence about, for TV shows, movies, they just want it all at once, and that works. That model does work.
They said you like the model of about a new book coming out every year, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I maybe it could be a little more frequent than that. You could do it twice a year. But
novels, though.
That comes to the hidden page that I hadn't brought up here yet, isn't it? Michael has a book that he has put out just about every year through Cursova Publishing. That's why Cursova's here. Alex is representing Cursova.
Heyo.
Nice. Let's see.
So, Alex, tell us about Cursova here. And
all right. So, Cursova Magazine is a quarterly science fiction and fantasy adventure magazine. We take kind of our cues from the old classic pulps, particularly Planet Stories, a little bit of Weird Tales. A bunch of people will really compare us to Weird Tales a lot. But starting this year, or actually last year, we started serializing novels for the first time. And the first novel that we serialized was Michael Tierney's Wild Stars 5, The Artomic Paradigm. We also serialized an 80s black and white comic, Bad Axe, over the course of 3 issues. And that was pretty cool. It was sort of our first foray into trying to do comics as well as prose fiction. So we serialized Wild Stars 5 across 3 issues. It did pretty well for us. And we're serializing Wild Stars 6, Orphan of the Shadowy Moon, beginning on our spring issue that's going to be out in about 10 days. You can pre-order the ebook version. The print version will be available on Amazon soon.
It looks cool. Somebody's got a little bit of an echo going. I don't know what it is. Somebody have the video open at the same time. There's a little bit of a.
I don't, but doesn't mean my mic couldn't be picking it up.
I think it's Michael.
I don't have anything else going.
Wait a second. Is it me? Could it be me? No, it's not me.
But yeah, Wild Stars was started off as a comic book series and graphic novel, and then. Michael, you decided to turn the rest of it. Well, you originally wrote it as a novel, made it a graphic novel, and then when you cut to the prose, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to do. Why did you stop making it a comic and go prose?
Well, back in the 70s, I originally was planned as a series of novels, and I wrote a bunch of them, and but then you had to get a novel published back then. You had to go through the Publishers Row in New York. and you send them your ideas, and they'd steal them and say, well, thanks for showing that to us. And then you start seeing your ideas pop up other places. Now, the comic book industry came along, stores like mine started to open up, and all of a sudden there was an avenue to the marketplace that you didn't have to go through those publishers. So I started independent publishing my Wild Stars comics, where I was adapting, one of my novels that I'd been sending around, and did very well with it in the 80s. There were other reasons why I didn't publish it in the 90s, but I kept on working on it. Came up with another novel under the Wild Stars, and then in the early 2000s, I kind of finished off the first big storyline in Wild Stars Volume 3. I had great covers by Frank Bruner. Collected them along with all the comics I did in the 80s into one big graphic novel called Wild Stars, The Book of Circles. That's the Volume 1. Then I'd also done a spin-off comic. Well, it was supposed to have been a trilogy called Force Majeure, and Part 1 came out, Force Majeure Prairie Bay. It did very well, but then the artist, as I'm sure Ethan probably knows, sometimes artists will disappear on you in the middle of a project. So here I was, there's a few pages into book 2 of a 3-book project, and the artist was gone. Well, you can't switch artists at that point. So I just novelized the rest of it and kind of made it part of the story why that part was comics, another part was novel, and I've just been novelizing it ever since.
And I think that worked out really well for part 2.
Yeah, you kind of got into the novel and said, and started off with, thus ends the video record of. And it was like, exactly. Oh, we were watching the video record of something here.
The first one.
Do you think you'll ever get?
Yeah, the first one was like a book of circles from this one telepath. Her, gathering all her information for her organization. The second one, it was all a video record from a court-martial trial, all the graphic images, and then just went with novels. You kind of went back to the way I was originally wanting to tell them anyway. So I got back to the novelizations, and that's when Crossover came along. They said, "Well, hey, yeah, we like what you're doing. We'll put out a Kickstarter exclusive of just your Volume 3." Then did another edition, kept it in print. And then when the number 4 came out, they also published that one and did a big 35th anniversary set of all 4 of the books and collected them into a ginormous, omnibus that I think is a lethal weapon in several states because it's so big you can hurt somebody with it. And, so that they've kept it all in print. I came up with like a multiversal scribe, compendium of all the characters, places, names up to that point, because it's a pretty big story at this point. And then with 5, they started serializing it in their magazine. And the 6, which is getting ready to come out and start, that's actually one of those novels I wrote back in the 70s. And I'd had it sitting. I never showed it to an editor. And surprise, none of those ideas ever showed up anywhere else. It just kind of shows you that you if you want to show your work to other publishers, they may not publish it, but they'll sure take a look at and take your good ideas. And Alex does not do that. People said they compare him to Weird Tales. One thing about him that is different from him and Weird Tales is he pays, and he pays on time. Weird Tales was atrocious.
I pay up front.
Yeah, Weird Tales did not do that. That had a contributing factor to Robert E. Howard's suicide. And Alex has been great to work with. Publisher doesn't try to steal your ideas and promotes it well. Does a great product, gets them out on time. They're just doing a fabulous job. They've been great to work with. So that's why I haven't gone back to the comics. The novel thing is working pretty good.
Yeah. Well, the link, by the way, for the sign up for this hadn't launched yet. That's why the $0. It's at the top of the chat, folks. So if you want to, be notified when that happens, Michael has done some.
We're going live Monday, 10 o'clock.
Okay. Michael's done some art chronologies, by the way. He's he's come up through the print industry, so he knows what he's doing with this stuff. His Edgar Rice Burroughs 100-year art chronology, reprinting every Tarzan, every John Carter cover from the pulp magazines to the comic books, did very, very well. Again, it's a giant brick. And you're working right now on the Robert E. Howard art chronology, right? You're still...
Yeah, that's been leading to a lot of sleepless nights trying to get this thing knocked out because it's a monster. I swear that if Robert E. Howard had a grocery list stack of his, shopping, they published that into the greatest shopping list of Robert E. Howard. I mean, anything if he ever wrote it, if it's a note or a scribble, it's been printed and reprinted and repackaged and then expanded and completed in a pastiche. And, so his work is everywhere. And, it's good work. Shame with it is that early on, he died after just only like 10 years of production. It turned out an incredible amount of work during that time period. Well, so other people came along. They really had no respect for the guy. They're like, well, we'll take his work. We'll do it our way. And so, that's what you got with the Lancer book of Conan paperbacks book series back in the 60s. Is you had L. Sprague, Camp, Lynn Carter, a bunch of other guys all doing their version of stuff. And you'd be reading along and like, wow, this is really good. Then all of a sudden you hit a point like, wow, this is not the same stuff. I mean, it's like you went from a fine sipping bourbon to a light beer. I mean, it just like it didn't have the same feel or taste. And then in the 70s, people started pushing like, we want to read the real thing. We want to read him without all the changes, without all the editorialization. And, people preferred that. And so it's taken a long time for his real work to get back out. And that's finally happened. And so I'm giving you the chronology, historical publication of everything, every book, every magazine, every appearance, also all the fanzines, which that was a ton of work to bring all that together. I'm not trying to cover all the fanzines about him, just the fanzines with his work. And then the comics, right now I'm almost done with volume 3. I just finished up with Dark Horse, and well, that was an up and down series. And so they had beautiful artwork, but again, it was a story. Sometimes they did a good job. Sometimes like they just didn't have a good feel for the character at all. And they actually had a section that it's like if I'd known about that, I would have been real worried because there was actually went over to the point of what would be called pornography. And that shocked me. I didn't even realize it was on my shelf because I hadn't read them at the time. So now I'm into the Marvels and the Ablaze. Once I'm done with that, then I'll be done with volume 3, and then I'll knock out volume 4, and we'll start trying to get it to print. Volume 4, I've already got a ton of work done. That's all the magazines. I'm also going to cover the UK books, and I've got the UK stuff written. And I've really got a lot of work done on that. So I'm really pushing to get that finished. So then I can get back on Wildstar 7 for Krasova for next year.
Now, what did that Kickstarter pull in? What did you pull in on that Kickstarter for the Robert E. Howard one? You did really well on it, I remember. 98,000. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Burroughs brought in 92,000, and it still continues to sell. I know I was talking to Jim, the president of Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc. The other day. Said, "Hey, we're getting royalty checks now on the Burroughs," and I guess a lot of times when they have stuff published, they go for all their money up front because the royalties never ever happen. And he was pleasantly surprised to start getting royalty checks on that it's reached that point. So
Ethan's an expert on those royalty checks, aren't you?
I wish I were more of an expert on them, but I'm happy to get them. Yes, it's a lot of fun. Passive income from DC.
Yeah, stuff you've already done just keeps rolling. I get tiny royalty checks every 3 months for the work I do on the Destroyer books, the Remo Williams thing. So I love getting those too. I want to do more of them as well. Speaking of Conan, though, Michael, have you heard the Pocahontas kerfuffle that's gone on?
No, I have not.
Well, apparently the last issue of King Conan, I want to say that was the title of it. There was an Indian maiden in there, and she used, I guess, the original name or the name that's often associated with Pocahontas. And just for using the name, outrage in great massive quantities rained down upon the writer, who bent the knee and apologized for using the name because I guess, you're appropriating, one of our great Native American heroes. And, this is somebody who was raped as a little girl. And how dare you put her into a comic? I'm like, really? Seriously?
Well, I got a character named Tonto in mind. So am I screwed over? I mean, am I going to be forced to apologize too?
Krasova published one of my short stories, Bears of 1812, with Sacagawea. It does have a connection to the Wild Stars. I haven't really explained it all yet, but that's coming up. And it's been retitled when it was included in the big omnibus as a Grass Maiden, which was actually what Sacagawea, that's what name she was kind of known by. Her before she was kidnapped and made to take the name of Sacagawea, which means like pusher of boats.
It's always something. You cannot write an original character and not piss off somebody. And they're always like, didn't you run this past a sensitivity reader? I'll tell you what, when I write a Destroyer novel, I give it to a sensitivity reader to see if I piss them off. If I didn't, I'm like, I didn't do my job good enough on this because I go out to insult.
Yeah, my Wild Stars always got fantastic reviews. The comics on the Volume 3 comics, they got one negative review that a guy didn't like it because I had a Native American shamanist and you could see her bare shoulders at the top. And he was just shocked and outraged. Oh my God, you just can't do that. That's not respectful. He was not wild about the Wild Stars.
I think you should fill a comic book with tons of microaggressions, as many as you can. Keep them subtle and prepare an insincere apology, which is what I've done. I'm ready to apologize. I'd like to issue an apology. That's the first thing I say. I'd like to issue an apology because I like the word issue. It sounds like a sneeze. And then you for all the people who are pretending to be upset over this ridiculous bullshit, I would like to say I'm sorry to you. And I'd like to say I'm sorry to your families and everybody who knows you. It must be difficult for them. People need to stop this. And I read that story and it was very I'm not, I'm used to it now. I'm used to the cancel culture stuff, but boy, it is troublesome to be an artist. It is a real there are people out there that are just laying landmines everywhere. They're just setting traps and just hoping that somebody will fall into them so they can all come out and just spit hatred and bile and pretend to be upset and pretend to be indignant. And pretend that they know better.
Yeah, it's like another story that Kristova published for me was a posthumous collaboration with Edgar Rice Burroughs on an unfinished Tarzan short story. And so we published it. It was published under the title of Tarzan and the Mysterious She, or Young Tarzan and the Mysterious She. And they got fantastic reviews. But then there was one guy who's supposed to be another Edgar Rice Burroughs expert, wrote a scathing review about all these terrible things I did with the story that didn't happen in the story. He took a look at the title, made an assumption, oh, this is what he's going to write, and wrote about all these things that I wrote that weren't. He didn't read the story. And the things he was complaining about didn't even happen. But people read that review on Amazon like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to read that because look what he did. And the guy didn't know what he was talking about. He obviously made a pre-assumption. He wanted to get mad about it because he thought the story should have never been written. I guess he didn't think that Burroughs should have written any of his Jungle Tales because it didn't fit into the chronology of the original Tarzan of the Apes. And so he thought that Burroughs.
How can you be an artist?
He knew he
How
should
can
have
you
done
create when you're worried about things like that? It's terrible.
These traps are only traps if you acknowledge that they're a trap when you fall into them. I mean, if you just keep doing what you're doing, these people will eventually get tired of screaming and shouting, and they'll go on to somebody who will pay attention to them when they spring a trap.
I hope that's true. I hope people learn that.
Yeah, Edgar Rice Burroughs' chronology got fantastic reviews, but one guy's like, oh, he didn't discuss the different art movements throughout the history of comics. This was a Tarzan. I mean, there was only one kind of style, realistic, that Tarzan. Oh, well, this is when they went to the Picasso stage. Yeah, it wasn't there. I mean, you just don't talk about things that don't apply. People just want to complain.
I agree.
And they do it so well and so entertainingly. All right. Well, we have actually gone over our hour allotment, but it was worth it. It was worth it. We had special guest pop in. Ethan, very happy to see you. Glad to talk with you always.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the invitation, and thanks everyone who came in here. We got got a little crowd going, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for being kind to me. I appreciate that too. I don't take that for granted ever. So
always. I tell everybody, when I hear the complainers, oh, I went on Ethan's show one time and I didn't sell anything. I'm like, listen, I was facing down being homeless 3 years ago, and all I had was a little crowd fund for the book that Critical Blast had published. And it was Christmas Eve, and you let me on your stream to shill it because you were doing letting everybody on. And I sold one. And I'm still forever grateful that you allowed me the opportunity. I'm like, it's not up to Ethan to sell my books. He just gave me an opportunity. So for crying out loud, don't be mad because you didn't sell your book.
The way
you didn't sell it.
It's long term. I mean, you don't look for those immediate sales. It's like when I'd be advertising on television from a store, I didn't expect people to just rush in the next day. Okay, if it's working or not. It's long term. Get your product out in front of people. The more exposure, it's going to domino down the road.
Yeah, Michael's one of the few comic shops that's actually gone down the road of taking out television advertisements in the local market and had success with it. Because really you jumped in Supergirl when nobody cared about Supergirl.
Yeah, well, that was one of the tricks I found by television advertising. Is you'd watch what was getting ready to come out. They didn't have a rate card yet, so you could go in, lock them in for a whole year at a really cheap rate, And then all of a sudden the ratings come in, it just goes through the sky. And, you're paying like a 10th or a 20th of what they could charge later to other people. But, hey, I got my contract for the year. You got to keep running the ads. And then the next year comes up for renewal. You're like, no thanks.
Yeah. Well, by the third year of Supergirl, you'd have been overpaying at the rate you probably got because it just went downhill. By the way, Michael's Wild Stars he's one of the few people who've gone up against Image Comics and came out the winner. We have an article about that on criticalblast.com if you want to search Wildstar and see that story. I'm not going to get into it anymore because it's over and done, and Michael can't talk about it. But let's just say there's a reason why you don't see Wildstar, the character from Image, anymore, and Michael is still publishing Wild Stars, the novel and graphic novel series. So
the comics are still in print.
What's this? Is that your graphic novel version right there, Michael?
No, well, this is the omnibus version by Krasova that collects the first 4 volumes, which includes the graphic novel with like 300 pages of comics. And so you'll get all of that in this big book, or you can buy them individually. And so the volume 5 that's is getting ready to go on Kickstarter on Monday is a novel but it's done in the same format, so it will match on the shelf with that. And they're also available in 4 actual volumes of the original graphic novels in both hardcover and in paperback. And in the paperback, we had some beautiful covers by Mark Wheatley, so we went virgin covers on those. And then on the back cover, he made another image where if you put all 4 of the books together, it assembles into one giant image. And so, it's some pretty nice packages there. But then, like I said, the big omnibus, that's the one that said could be considered a lethal weapon because it's such a monster. I don't do anything small. You put that together with my Egg Rise Barrels book, that's a 16-pound book right there, 4-book set.
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't do little projects.
And if people are interested in learning more about the Wild Stars, Michael's link is right below the video. It stays there in the description for all LCS Guys shows. It's thewildstars.com. You can find everything that Michael's been working on and find links to make purchases and to back future projects. With that, guys, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I do appreciate it. It's always fun talking with everybody. I haven't linked to Ethan's YouTube channel, but for crying out loud, if you can't find Comic Artist Pro Secrets, then you don't know how to use the internet, right? So do subscribe if you haven't already. And, stay tuned for more comic book entertainment from Ethan. Folks in the chat, appreciate you being here so much. We don't have a show without you, as I always say. So we're always glad when you're here. And as always, while you were here, just hope you had a blast. Good night, everybody.